Good morning, kapwa Filipino. Magbasa na tayo ng ating history, guys. History of the Filipino People by Agoncillo and Guerrero. Today is 14 January 2023. History of the Filipino People, Part 4 na tayo, the American Period. Topic number 15, the period of suppressed nationalism. Nandito tayo sa paragraph, Suppression of Nationalistic Journalism and Literature. Basa. Suppression of nationalistic journalism and literature. Early in the American regime, the military authorities enforced strict censorship on statements and reports made by American newspaper correspondents stationed in Manila. Official military dispatches from Manila to Washington and made public in the American capital presented an optimistic view of the Philippine situation, that it was well in hand, even when Filipino resistance to American rule was still raging. Strict censorship compelled the staff correspondents to abet this misrepresentation of facts by exercising or altering uncontroverted statement of facts. On the plea that they would alarm the people at home or have the people of the United States by the ears, the military regime applied the policy of censorship with equal rigidness and tenacity to Filipino publications. In 1902, the sedition law punished anybody who would utter seditious words or speeches, write, publish, or circulate scurrilous libels against the government of the United States or the insular government of the Philippine Islands, with long imprisonment and a stiff fine. Undaunted by such prohibitions, nationalistic journalists wrote editorials and writers made use of the drama to agitate for independence and at the same time expose American abuses in the government. The Filipino writers, particularly the Tagalog writers and newspaper editors, suffered from censorship and in many instances from the penalties meted out to them for having violated the sedition law. Because of a suppressed press, the Tagalog writers used talinghaga or symbolism, a literary device that had been greatly used by writers during the period preceding the Revolution. The dramatists, in a desire to keep the idea of independence burning among the people who and states plays that were characterized as inflammatory propaganda pieces masquerading as zarzuelas. Not every play, however, escaped the detection of the censors. One writer, Juan Abad, was indicted for sedition because of his play Tanikalang, Ginto, The Golden Chain. The court of first instance sentenced Abad to 2 years imprisonment and a stiff fine of $2,000 on the grounds that the play was anti-American and the characters personalized existing institutions and personalities involved in the strained relations between the Filipinos and the Americans that were bound to excite the reader or the audience. Judge Paul Linebarger of the Court of First Instance of Batangas sustained the interpretation of the prosecution that the presentation of the various characters in the play constituted an attack upon American sovereignty. Liwanag or Light Dawn represented the Philippines, and Ki Olayaw or Lover represented the Filipinos who wanted freedom and independence. Maimbot, an avaricious person, symbolized the United States, and Nagtapon, spendthrift or renegade, stood for those who collaborated with the Americans in wresting from the Philippines its freedom. Nagtapon betrayed the Lita, Grip or Poverty, who also represented the Philippines. The Supreme Court of the Philippines, however, did not support the contention of the lower court that the representation of certain institutions in Philippine society by the characters of the play constituted sedition and exonerated Abad. Abad's brush with the law did not prevent him from writing another nationalistic play entitled Isang Punlo ng Kaaway, A Ballad of the Enemy, which also caused his arrest. Aurelio Tolentino, another prolific writer, wrote a play entitled Kahapon, Ngayon at Bukas, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, which protested American rule and contained warning that the Filipino people would take up arms and expel the Americans. The play attacked the occupation of the Philippines by the Americans and closed with the success of the revolutionists. The author played the role of the Ilog or Juan de la Cruz, who broke his chains of bondage and freed himself from prison with the foreign flags were hauled down. A participant symbolizing Inang Bayan, mother country, hauled down the American flag. Taking this as a cue, other participants in the play shouted, "Long live freedom, long live motherland." Tolentino translated the play into Pampango and Bicol and had it represented at all native theaters in Manila and in some provincial towns where the spirit of insurrection was still intense. Consequently, the authorities arrested Tolentino and in 1905 the court sentenced him to life imprisonment. Ay, grabe oh. Life imprisonment talaga. The government later reduced the penalty to 15 then to 8 years. Ayun, binabaan yung sentence guys. Until in the end, while Tolentino was on parole, Governor General William Cameron Forbes pardoned the playwright in 1912. Tolentino also wrote another nationalistic play entitled Lohang Tagalog, Lit Tagalog Tears, which dealt with the conquest of an already independent Philippines and described how the Filipinos who desired independence were pitted against those Filipinos who favored self-government under foreign rule. Another playwright, Juan Matapang Cruz, wrote the play Hindi Ako Patay, I Am Not Dead, which aroused the nationalistic feeling of the audience by its symbolic description of the struggle of the Filipinos for independence and its emotional attacks on the American occupation of the Philippines. The presentation of this play sometimes led to near riots and prompted the sending of the American military police to the theater. Like Tolentino, Abad was arrested and sentenced to a long prison term. The imprisonment of Tolentino and Abad, in spite of the efforts of Manuel L. Quezon, the defense counsel, discouraged many writers from presenting their plays to the public. Because of rigid government supervision and censorship, the playwrights turned to writing saccharine and therefore harmless plays called dramas of manners. The American authorities also regarded nationalist newspapers as subversive, so that it almost became impossible, according to Jaime C. de Beira, to publish the newspaper with liberal tendencies. In Cebu, Sergio Osmeña founded El Nuevo Dia, one of the earliest nationalistic papers. Rafael Palma and Jaime C. de Beira, two writers of the revolutionary period, wrote for the newspaper. The newspaper had to pass rigid censorship and was twice suspended. This, however, did not discourage its writers, who continued to write nationalistic editorials attacking the Americans in the Philippines. The government at the time had not yet captured Aguinaldo, so that El Nuevo Dia functioned as a potent weapon for the revolutionists, prompting one of its critics to call it the organ of the revolution with white globes. In Manila, the daily El Renacimiento was founded under the leadership of Rafael Palma in 1901. The paper became very popular because of its vigorous campaign against dishonesty and corruption in the government. El Renacimiento, The Renaissance, and its Tagalog counterpart Muling Pagsilang, Rebirth, published strongly worded comments on the abuses of exploiting caciques and unscrupulous government officials. On October 13, 1908, the paper came out with a scathing editorial entitled Avis de Rapiña, Birds of Prey, which denounced the practices of American government officials and businessmen. Then C. Worcester, Secretary of the Interior and avid anthropologist from the University of Michigan, felt alluded to and filed a libel suit against Martin Ocampo and Teodora M. Calao, owner and editor respectively of El Renacimiento. The entire Spanish and Filipino press unanimously supported the newspaper, and many Filipinos offered their legal moral and financial aid to the victims of American injustice. Teodoro M. Calao called the libel case the suit of the people against the government, since the accuser, then Worcester, who was known to be opposed to Philippine independence, had been frequently criticized by other Filipino journalists for dereliction of official duties as Secretary of the Interior. The court sentenced Ocampo and Calao to jail and ordered them to pay 60,000 pesos to Worcester for moral damages. Guys, malaki na yung 60,000 pesos nung araw. Kasi magkano ang palitan ng dollar nung araw, diba? Pero yung isang laki ng penalty, dollars talaga, USD, $2,000. Ito 60,000 pesos lang. Pero sa panahon nga nila, malaki na yan. 60,000 pesos to Worcester for moral damages. The defendants appealed the case to the Supreme Court of the Philippines, which however sustained the decision of the lower court. Upon the appeal of the embattled journalist to the Supreme Court of the United States, the latter affirmed the decision of the Philippine tribunals. The newspapermen, including Lope K. Santos, Manuel Palma, Feliciano Barreto, and Arcadio Arellano, against whom Worcester also filed a suit for being stockholders in the newspaper, had to sell El Renacimiento and Muling Pagsilang to pay the damages to Worcester. Ocampo and Calao, however, did not spend a single day in jail because Governor General Francis Burton Harrison pardoned them in 1914, when the case was finally decided by the Supreme Court of the United States. The libel suit made the nationalistic journalist, especially Teodoro M. Calao, even more popular among the people. When Calao ran for assemblyman in 1909, he won with a resounding success over his rival. Bukas na yung flag law. Ay, hindi. Okay, basahin na natin. Flag Law, 1907. In still one more measure of suppressing nationalism, the Philippine Commission passed Act 1696, which prohibited the display of all flags, banners, symbols, and other paraphernalia used by the resistance against the United States, as well as the flag banners that emblems for the Katipunan. The prominent display of the Katipunan flag in the victory parade of the Nationalistas to celebrate their victory in the elections of 1907 irritated many Americans who noticed that the American flag was relegated to the background. The protest lodged by these Americans with the civil government caused the Philippine Commission to promulgate the restrictive law, which the Philippine Assembly tried in vain to repeal. It was not until 1919 that the flag law was repealed and the government allowed and legalized the display of the Filipino flag. Suppression of nationalist parties, bukas na to guys. Bye everyone, God bless.